I'm doing great.
Took over in April. We're going to do a little business talk before we get into
Yeah, took over in April.
How's it going?
It's going great so far.
Yeah?
It's been a wild 6.5, 7 months. Who's counting?
Why wild?
It's a very dynamic category, industry, with huge potential. And it's in its infancy, and I think hopefully we'll talk about that today. A lot of people say, oh, the plant-based category, is it declining? Is the demise of it? It makes a great headline. It's a sensational story. And I would just say that it hasn't been established and created yet. So a big part of what I want to do at Impossible Foods is...
What do you mean by that? Because it has been established.
No, it's been around in earnest for, probably less than 5 years.
Okay.
There's been vegan burgers and things out for 10 or 12 years, but in terms of alt protein that's going, trying to displace the animal product, that's a 3 to 5 year phenomenon. And we just launched in retail 2 years ago in the middle of COVID. So if you discount, we've probably been available at retail for a year.
Yeah.
And so I think it's in its infancy. And I think it's yet to be created, yet to be established. And I think it's our job to really create this category. It's a $3 billion category in a $1.4 trillion addressable market. So it is very, very small, right? And it's our job to mold it and shape it and grow it. And that work hasn't been done yet.
Peter, you're someone who knows the food industry really well. You and I were just you were reminding me you were 10 years at Chobani and you're doing this. You understand kind of reaching consumers and what they want. I want to go to a recent Bloomberg opinion piece that talked about plant-based product sales in the US, and they said they've been flagging.
Sure.
The category's meteoric growth in 2020, flattening in 2021, and since last September, a key portion of its retail sales has dropped more than 10%. Its reputation has also been badly bruised by the stock performance of Beyond Meat, which is down more than 90% from a peak back in 2019. The column does go on to say, still, it's a mistake for investors to write off the value and potential of the sector as a whole, which will be a keystone among climate solutions going forward. So first up, I'm going to get to the climate solutions in a moment. The first part, though, unpack it for me. What is, though, wrong with plant-based industry today and the sales, and then we can get into kind of the...
So the category is down, and that is a fact, right? You can read IRI data, Nielsen data. It was plus 40, 50, 60%. Now it's hovering at -5 to -7, depending on the week. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There was a COVID bump probably in there somewhere along the lines. Yeah. There was a novelty bump when it really, first became available. So some of it's a correction, some of it's some noise in the data, and then some of it there are players in the category who will remain nameless because I'm a proponent of the category that are not doing well.
Okay.
And so, the category is a composition of companies.
Right.
And so if there's some companies in a category that don't do well, they can bring the whole category down. And so we're doing well. I mean, we're growing 60% at retail. We're in 40,000.
Top line?
Top line sales. And so we have our own playbook and we have our own, approach here. But I think it's lazy to look at comparables and try to project that on a category, right? Each company has their own issues and challenges and playbook, and some work, some don't work. But that doesn't mean that you should cloud the whole category, right? And I think the category also is confusing because some of the players in the category are all vegan burgers that are veggie burgers.
Yeah.
And some of them are all meat, which I don't like the name of that, but those are those products that are displacing
faux
animal.
meat, never good.
Never good.
Do you want to eat faux meat? No.
Never good. And then look, I think the animal industry's done quite a good job. They're highly coordinated and pretty loud in trying to confuse this plant-based meat category.
Right.
With calling it processed or faux or too many ingredients. And they have a lot of money, and they're highly coordinated, like I said. And I think where the mistake of the plant-based meat is, it's young, it's restless, it's very fragmented with a lot of different players. And we have not been coordinated in our messaging, and we have not been loud in support of our products. And so combination of big meat kind of being loud and coordinated, and plant-based meat being shy and uncoordinated has not helped the situation.
So let's talk messaging. And let's get to the second part of that Bloomberg opinion column, which said It's a mistake for investors to write off the value and potential of the sector as a whole, which will be a keystone among climate solutions going forward. Climate solutions going forward. So why is plant-based food a keystone among future climate solutions?
Yeah, it is the scale of food.
Because this would be great for the narrative.
Yes, it would be great for the narrative.
Or the reality.
And it's a complicated message to get out there from a consumer perspective. And I think a lot of the issue around, look, the food has now come a long way. So the food now stands up against the animal product. And most people that try it say it's much better than I thought, and taste, texture, flavor. And especially when you build a burger and you have cheese and put lettuce and tomato on it, it's very difficult, right? And we hear that with Whoppers, and we hear that with our Impossible Sausage Sandwich at Starbucks. So the food is in a really good place. We have not got the health credentials across, right? It's 0 cholesterol meat, right? That has 30% less saturated fat and less calories. That has not been communicated. And then the climate piece of it, there is no other alternative to reverse climate change other than food. So most people equate climate change with electric cars, recycling, less electricity, less water use. Those are all good things. They will not reverse climate. The scale of them.
Food systems account for a third of emissions.
A third of emissions. Also, if you think about 50% of the usable Earth's land mass is animal agriculture related. And all of that land has been cleared. 50%. 3% are towns and cities. 50% of the entire Earth's world. So the scale is huge. And as a result, 60% of all wild animals have been killed. And animal products, and I don't want to sit here and go on and on about how bad the animal industry is.
We'll talk about your climate imprint when you guys do plant-based
So our plant-based meat, if you look at 50 million pounds of our plant-based meat versus 50 million pounds of animal meat, right? Direct comparison. We'll use 4.5 billion less gallons of water. We would save 37 million trees, and we would avoid 1.5 billion pounds of CO2. That's 50 million pounds. That's a small amount, right? That's a fraction of what we will make this year. So the scale is massive, right, when it comes to food. So food choice and climate change is a very, very powerful thing. It's misunderstood. Many people are not aware of it, right? They just don't equate food choice with climate change. So the more we can educate people, I think it can be quite powerful. And there is no other tool out there that has the power to reverse climate change like food choice, right?
Which is interesting because we focused so much on EVs, and I get the importance of it.
Which is, by the way, a good thing.
Right, right.
But if all cars went to electric, it would not have the impact of food choice.
So good business, and you and I talked about on the phone, I care, I turn over, I look at my food, I want to know what it is. My 19-year-old daughter does the same thing.
Sure.
Help me out, because part of the reason I'm not your customer, and I probably should be, because I care about my health and what goes in my mouth, is that I still am concerned, and I even brought it up in the newsroom today, and in our makeup room, I'm like, who's eating this stuff? And they're like, sodium, sodium. Like, you talk about the healthy part of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, can it be better?
It can be better. So one of the big things we want to do at Impossible, I think we have a really good product.
And I know you've done some reformulating.
Sure. We're on beef 2.5.
Okay.
We're not going to go iPhone 14.
How far do we go?
We're not going iPhone 14, but we're going to go probably beef 4.0.
Okay.
I can see probably a 3.0, a 3.5, and a 4.0 to perfect it. Taste, texture, flavor, nutrition. And every time we reformulate that food, and I think this is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
We have to continuously improve those products. And these products have only been around 3 or 4 years. So it's not unusual to continue through technology and new ingredients to try to perfect the product. And in doing that, I think we'll chip away more at saturated fat, sodium, we'll simplify the ingredient list. The ingredient list is long, it's all plant-based, but it's long because you're trying to mimic the texture of animal meat. It's very hard to do.
It's complicated.
Very complicated. So people say it's processed. I think Twinkies are processed, right? It's artificial. It's not processed because the ingredients...
Twinkies are processed.
Yes. But our food's not processed because the ingredient list is long. We're using a lot of different things to mimic the texture to get people to have it instead of the animal product. But it's all plant-based.
Right.
So I would much rather ingest that than something highly artificial look, processed is food that doesn't contain a lot of minerals and vitamins and protein, right? Our food contains vitamins, minerals, and has more protein than the animal product. So it's nutrient dense, it's nutrient rich, and yes, the ingredient list is long, and we'll work on simplifying that. But these are all the misconceptions and myths out there that have been and affected people like you.
Well, you and I kidded, you said maybe we need a Got Milk campaign if folks remember it. It was a really productive campaign.
It was.
I'm still a milk drinker.
Yeah.
Although, yeah.
But you like oat milk, too.
I do like oat milk, but with Oreos, you got to have the real thing. But what's interesting is that I do wonder, do you guys, what's the thinking? You mentioned all the players, and some of them are startups, some of them are Maple Leaf, Kraft Heinz investing in plant-based technology.
Sure.
Conagra. You've got Kellogg's, Morningstar Farms, we've talked about them. I mean, so these are some really established players. What do you as an industry, if you're trying to create a sustainable business that is good also for the climate, how do you guys, what are the conversations you're having? Are you not having them, and that's part of the problem?
Yeah, no, I think in the spirit of total candor and honesty, we haven't had enough conversations. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of players in the space. I think some are small startups, and they're trying to get investing and funding.
Yeah.
Some are more established, and it might be side business, Morningstar with Kellogg's.
Right.
Some having their own issues and challenges right now, so some are distracted. So as a category, we don't have a coherent message. And by the way, as a category, we're kindred spirits, right? We should really kind of coalesce around some messaging and really combine resources and
you're going
get the
up
word
against
out.
a food infrastructure, just like fossil fuels and the integrated
100%.
oil companies going up against EVs. It's tricky.
In the end of the day, as CEO of Impossible Foods, I'm not happy if I'm taking share from other plant-based products, right? That's not going to move climate change. We have to displace the animal analog in order to do this. So we should do a lot more messaging, and we should do a lot more together to aid and abet this climate crusade that we're on, because we're running out of time. And I think, so now I think, it used to be there were so many people that didn't believe climate change was real. So now I think that's less of the issue. The issue now, or the challenge now, is what do we do about it and how do we fix it, right? And food choice is kind of at the bottom of people's understanding. So this is a massive communication opportunity challenge, probably the biggest out of any industry I've ever seen. And so messaging is extremely important.
I want to ask, who believes in climate change? Who doesn't believe in climate change?
Yeah, see? So that's really not the issue.
Right. Who eats plant-based food regularly? Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's the opportunity and the challenge right there.
All right, so
if you believe in climate change and don't eat plant-based meat, that's because either you don't understand it, you heard bad things about it, you don't equate your eating habits to helping solve the climate challenge.
Okay, you talked about distractions, and maybe there needs to be more cohesion among the industry. And I'm going to just, if you indulge me for a second, because there was a headline today, and I think about some of the infighting that's going on. Sure. And this had to do with the revoking of a key Impossible Foods European Union patent. Sorry, I should have warned you. But it just broke this morning. How does this kind of stuff distract you, or is this a problem? Or is it just litigation?
I didn't read about it. Listen, I think, look, how we make our food is important to us. We have a lot of IP around it.
And patents are important, yeah.
No question about it, right? And making plant-based food taste as good as an animal product is not easy work. Right? And we've spent a decade doing it. So we have a lot of IP around our food. And, principally speaking, we'll defend our IP. But I think it's a distraction.
It's a distraction.
To be honest with you. I think we have bigger fish to fry, and I think, we have a bigger opportunity to go after. And I don't really like all this back and forth. Like I said, in the end of the day, I think we should be a coalition of the willing, right, in this plant-based sector to try to take on the real competitor, which is the animal analog, right? And we're better together than individually. We don't have the might. By the way, just real quick. These
Yeah,
plant-based companies are not large,
I know.
right? We're not Tyson, been in business for 80 years, that's a Fortune 50 company. These even big plant-based companies are, $500 million in revenue. And so we don't have the muscle, the might, and the money, right? To go against the establishment. Now we could better do it, I think, together.
Well, it's interesting. I used to do a lot of stuff with Chipotle.
Sure.
And Steve Ells and his team, and I know it's a different team now, and talk with Brian Nichols over there.
Yeah.
But when they started that company, they really were trying to do food in a different way and produce it.
Sure.
And did talk about the establishment, and it's tough, but this whole idea of regenerative farming.
Yep.
So how do we, if we're creating sustainable businesses, you guys are creating a sustainable business, like how do you do it? I mean, we talked a lot about messaging. Mm-hmm. But I mean, so what are the steps ultimately? Is it just messaging that ultimately will grow your business?
No, I think we have to continuously improve the products. So if I look at our business, I think we're going to invest a lot of money on continuously improving. So
Okay.
that's like,
So taste,
3.0.
flavor,
Taste,
nutrition.
Texture, flavor, and nutrition,
Okay.
right? The nutrition's good, but
Right.
it could be better.
Okay.
Right? And then I think we have to tell the world about how good our food is and look, it's a complicated value proposition, okay? It tastes as good as the burger that you grew up with. It's better for you, and it's better for the planet. It's clunky. I don't have the value propositions to sink in my head, but whoever cracks that code's gonna, blow this market wide open. So the value proposition to the consumer, and a lot of this, by the way, is trial. So if you look at Impossible, we're growing at 60%. We have 5% household penetration.
Nothing.
So 95% of the
Right.
country hasn't even tried us yet. We have 400 TDPs.
What's TDPs?
Total distribution points. When I was at Chobani, we had 6,000. So we're increasing availability and approachability and accessibility is extremely important. We have 17% awareness. 83% of the country hasn't even heard us. So a lot of this is fundamental food marketing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Making your product more. We're in 40,000 outlets in food service. There's 1.5 million outlets in food service. So that's why I say this is just getting started, right? And so availability, approachability, awareness, all important. The other thing I would just say is I think that this plant-based community got the messaging wrong in the beginning, right? I
Yeah.
don't think we want to vilify meat eaters. I don't think we want to judge meat eaters. We want to invite them to try our products and incorporate them into their lives. And if you have 1 or 2 burgers out of your 7 a month that are plant-based, that's a win.
Right.
Right? And it's not a binary thing, right? People are flexitarians. It's not whether you're a meat eater or non-meat eater. There's a lot of people in that. There's a movable middle
Right.
that has not been marketed to and spoken to in an inviting way.
So when you either are doing stuff with Walmart or fast food companies or airlines or, you've got Climate Pledge Arena, right? And talk to us a little bit about that thinking and how that's helping in terms of messaging, narrative, and just really your mission as a company that's not just creating products for consumers that are better and better for the planet, but also you think about your company culture and the buy-in there.
Yeah, I mean, Impossible is a very mission-oriented company, right? And a lot of people join Impossible for the climate mission and to reverse climate change. Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. Now, we can't achieve that unless we have a sustainable business. So I think the other thing we have to clear up here is that we're a for-profit company. And the better we do as a company and the more plant-based meat we make, ship, and sell, the better we do as a company, the more we achieve the mission. Mm-hmm. And I think, ESG is a term thrown out. We're all trying to figure out exactly what it is and what the value of it is and all of that. We have a big giant E, right?
Yeah.
And we're probably one of the only companies or one of the few companies that the product we make is the E.
Yeah.
Right? We're not buying carbon credits and we don't have a sustainability department. We have a company that's sustainable.
Yeah, yeah.
But none of us will achieve this unless we can figure out the economics, right? So we have to have Impossible has to be a viable, thriving business. We need EBITDA, we need gross margins. I know it's terribly boring stuff. And we need growth.
I work for Bloomberg. I think it's kind of
fascinating. And we need growth.
Yeah.
And that will help us achieve the mission. It's interesting. A lot of people can't wrap their mind. Wait. So you want to be this business that makes money and profit in order to achieve the mission? Yes, we have to. And I think that's the other thing that's happened. You've seen a lot of these companies come and go in the plant-based space.
Well, do you think then the timeline for the plant-based industry, we need to maybe rethink it a little bit? Like, is that it? Or do you think the next year, or is it 2 years, that the growth just incredibly
No, I
takes
think
off?
it's a marathon, not a sprint. I do. I think it's not. The
So
world
5
is
years,
moving in a
10
plan.
years?
I think it's 5 to 10 years out. I think the world is moving in a plant-based direction. That's undebatable. There's not enough animal meat to feed the population.
Right.
And you saw the droughts over the summer, and input costs are up, and they're culling herds, and animal products are up 23% in the last 16 months because water usage and drought and grain and war. And so this is inevitable, and it's essential to happen, where people are going to need to eat more plant-based products.
And then in terms of pricing, where do you feel like plant-based will ultimately settle in kind of the pricing spectrum of food and protein food?
Yeah, and I think that's another thing where it's been thrown out like, oh, the plant-based industry doesn't work because the pricing, right? So if I just look at Impossible, if you look at it in our data, in 2 years we've gone down 23% in price, and the animal's gone up 23%. So we're less expensive than grass-fed and organic beef.
Because you could go lower, or because you purposely went lower?
I think we will continue to go lower over time, and I think the animal analog will continue to go up. It's just more efficient. Growing soybeans and pea protein requires a lot less water. It's a lot more efficient, right? It's easier to ship, so your freight is less. The factories require less employees. It's a more efficient supply chain, much more efficient supply chain. So I think with scale, plant-based continues to come down, and I think I see no path but the animal analog to continue to go up because of input costs.
Do we have any? I want to see if we have any questions. Any questions?
Hi.
Hi.
We do have a couple of audience questions. How do you see entrants like Notco playing in the same space as Impossible?
I applaud it. I think Notco is a good company. I think it was smart to do the deal with Kraft. If you think about it, they're making plant-based alternatives, and then you have a Kraft Heinz that has might muscle distribution. And so, Notco has the food.
Yeah.
And they kind of hitched onto the wagon of distribution, right? I think it's a smart joint venture, or whatever they're calling it. I applaud it.
Can you continue to go alone?
We can.
Do you want to?
But I'm open to partnerships. I think whatever it takes to scale, we should be open to, right? Because there's a larger thing at work here.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very open to partnerships.
Okay.
We also have a question, about medical and scientific studies and how that sort of plays into the marketing piece of your food, and kind of convincing those consumers that you all were talking about earlier. The branding piece of this, trying to convince them to try your product. So curious about any sort of testing or data that you're putting out around that.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing we have to do is just get the description better, right? I mean, I don't like plant-based meat. It's confusing.
What would you call it? What do you want to call it?
I don't know. Call it meat from plants, animal-free meat. I don't have, in 7 months I have not cracked the code, by the way. But I don't think that's helpful in how we're describing plant-based meats. Like, is that a riddle? I don't even understand it. I don't think we've gotten the claims right? So we're 33% less saturated fat, yet I hear people say our stuff is high in saturated fat. It's 33% less in the animal.
Yeah.
Period. We have zero cholesterol.
I hear Tom Brady's available for some advertising.
Oh.
He's kind of done with the crypto thing.
Yeah, he's got to focus on. He barely won that game on Monday night.
Sorry.
But we are zero cholesterol. Carol and I were kidding yesterday on the phone. When we launched oat milk, I remember we called it lactose-free milk, right?
Yeah.
So you took the negative of milk out. Like, no one loves lactose, right? And lactose intolerance is a thing. So I don't know, maybe it's cholesterol-free meat. I don't know. Like, cholesterol's not a good thing.
Right.
I don't care who you are. No one embraces cholesterol.
Right.
So this is zero trans fat, zero cholesterol.
When you get doctors saying this is what you should be eating, like, there's a win.
And even without doctors, I don't think people are dying to have high cholesterol. So,
Yeah.
So we have to figure out a shorthand, I don't know if it's a scientific study, where it's a common sense way of saying what this proposition is. And I don't think, we've had academic ways of saying it, we'd have scientific.
Yeah.
We need to speak to consumers in regular language and get them to try our
There's a
food.
thing called focus groups.
Yeah.
One last question.
This is a focus group right here.
What can other CEOs take back to their office to help get their company to maybe buy in on climate sustainability pledges that can be acted on? And I know in our call we talked about people say a lot of things and then they don't do
Sure.
it. Pledges are great, but action's even
Yeah.
better. Just a final thought.
Yeah, I think it's not a department.
Great.
And I don't think it's a pledge. I think it's a way of working and a way of life. I mean, we joined the Amazon Climate Pledge even though our food is inherently E. That's because we can improve upon other aspects of our business, right? When I look at our factories, they could be more efficient.
Yeah.
When I look at our freight and how we ship things, we could be doing full trucks and we could be buying electric. There's things we can do. When I look at our packaging, we're not perfect. We could do better on our packaging. So I think if everyone just, I think it's a consciousness and it's a mindset.
Yeah.
I think if everyone just looked at their business, and all these little things go a long way.
It's a core. I always think about
And to me, it's a mentality, and it's a way of working versus a pledge and versus a department. And then that's the first thing. The second thing is you'd be surprised how your employees will just galvanize around this. It's a prideful thing. It's an emotional thing, and it's a very high energy topic for your employees. So they would love it as well. So I think it's a good morale boosting thing as well.
Well, look forward to seeing what's next from you guys.
Thank you.
Peter McGuinness, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.